Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Jim Stamm. And how you doing there, big guy?
Oh, man. Just happy to be here, Gary.
Good to hear, brother. And we finally got our friend Graves back on the show. It has been a while, and she was just chasing leaves around and all kinds of crazy stuff going on today.
I took advantage of the weather yesterday and got some leaves gathered up, and I'm ready to rock and roll and talk some Bucs baseball today.
Sounds good. I mean, the leaves are falling, and before we dig in here today too much, I know the big news today is the Rule 5 protections, and we'll talk about this from a reaction standpoint next week. I mean, I've written prediction pieces on my site. We've talked about how they could play it on this show multiple times. I just don't want to put out a show that's dated before it premieres. So I think this week we're going to tackle some more talkable subjects, if you will. So I've been really enjoying all the coverage of the Pirates training camp going on in Bradenton. Alex Stump's been down there, and Jason Mackey. They've been really putting out some great pieces of information for us to discuss. And as I'm watching hitters work on individual technique and seeing more different methods of instruction going on, I can't help feeling, isn't it at least a little weird that all this is happening without having a hitting coach in place? I mean, by all means, get the right person. Take your time. But this is getting strange. Graves, you've been all about this training camp since Cora got fired. What in the world are they doing here?
It's a great question, and it is mind-boggling. I mean, but part of me in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they have somebody and he's there in camp and he's working with all these guys and they just haven't announced it yet. You know, maybe they're waiting to hire the third base coach and the AAA manager as well. And they're just going to announce it all at one time. But yeah, with everything that's been going on, why haven't they announced it yet? He sets the table. He sets the tone, and without him being there, I mean, it's just kind of a strange feeling that what's going on here.
It really reinforces to me that the hitting plan is not going to come from the new hire. It really strikes me that the hitting plan is already established. I wouldn't be surprised if it's literally Derek Shelton's hitting plan. Just going back to what he did in Minnesota, wanting to call upon that. And perhaps that's the way they're going with it, Jim. But, I mean, what do you make of it? I mean, it's at least a little strange, right? Especially when you start seeing some weird things like we saw today from Alex Stump down there with Peguero taking underhanded 2-foot tosses and stepping into the box like getting a running start at it.
Yeah, well, let me just get the obligatory joke out of the way for the Pirates here and say, well, maybe the hitting's just not that important to them. It hasn't been for the last couple seasons, so maybe they're just not going to place a priority on it. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, Gary, you kind of, damn you stole my thunder. I was going to say that, to me, what it seems like is they already know what they want to do approach wise, philosophically within the system. So it's just a matter of finding the guy that will go ahead and they feel will best convey that message throughout the system and to their hitters, and be able to kind of, reiterate that as close as possible to whether it's Shelton or who's ever, wherever they've landed as far as the philosophy goes. So I think that's it. It'd be nice just to have a name at this point. But maybe it just hasn't worked out yet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like Graves' theory, though, that they're basically doing the October 5th DFA thing with the hitting coach, but
yeah, and Alex and Jason and whoever else is down there, they've been sworn to secrecy that they can't say who it is because it hasn't been announced yet. But to get to Jim's point, I mean, and you guys are both right. I mean, they've even talked about they're looking for a specific skill set and something that's going to complement what is already here. So I think they and maybe they've missed out on some guys that have been, hired elsewhere. But hopefully here pretty soon we're gonna find out who it is. But yeah, they're just to read a quote, and this was from back on October 15th. So much is just about fit. It's about finding someone who has particular skill set, experience, strengths, and complements and adds to what we already have here, and someone who is really a good cultural fit with our players and our staff, someone who is interested in coming in and being part of the team just to help help the players get better. So, I mean, you guys both noted. I mean, they know what they're looking for, and they're just trying to find that right guy or right woman, as for that fact matter.
And I should probably thank you for reading their Indeed post, because that's exactly what that came across as, isn't it? I mean, they interviewed John Baker too. I'd have to imagine something would have slipped there if there was indeed somebody in the works. But
right,
a couple of weeks ago, I know Ben Charrington said they felt like they were pretty close on some people. That was like towards the end of the World Series. So I guess I'm a little weirded out to see it stretching on as long as it has. It seems to be a pretty important position. And I don't hold out an awful lot of hope for them to be hiring phantom assistants and whatnot that we're hoping they're going to find when they haven't even replaced such a crucial position at this point.
Right. Well, and it was kind of reported yesterday, and John Baker was reported as saying that they plan to hire a coaching coordinator, a position the organization did not have last season. And we're starting this week the hiring process of bringing in someone externally to come in and systemize the position. So I think they are maybe looking to expand. They're certainly not looking to get any smaller as far as the coaching staff goes. So it's but I'm ready to hear some names and get this going.
That's a good point that they look to expand. Jim, I mean, why do they seem to be behind the rest of the league on all this stuff? Like, why aren't they thinking of this stuff a couple years ago? You didn't need to see what you had before you saw what they blatantly didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you, to me, like, just from a want to know perspective, I just want to know what direction they're heading in and what the philosophy specifically will be. Let that guy speak on it a little bit, kind of hear Sherrington and Shelton expand on it, and just really dive into like what the approach is going to be. I'm sure it's not going to be reinventing the wheel, but what are you emphasizing, and what are you putting the major focus on as far as what's important to you for hitters? So I just want to get that guy in place, and then I want to hear what the approach is. And you would think the players want to do that too. So we're sitting here, just as fans wanting to know. So yeah, I think it's a little odd. If it stretches out another couple weeks, does it start to get really weird? Yeah, I mean, we're
getting to the point where I'm starting to think they're just going to play tapes of Derek Shelton speed hitting in the dugout.
Oh boy!
So somebody's got to do something, right? I mean, they got to find somebody, and I'd imagine that's coming soon. We already heard the third base coach is likely coming from internal sources. So, okay. I mean, that could mean really anywhere in the organization, so that makes sense. But I guess like the exhaustive search throughout the league isn't really a thing. They probably have a couple guys they're looking at, and it's probably not all that important to what they're trying to teach right now. So be it.
No, I'm just I think it's interesting. I think we can probably cross off the list internally for this position. So like you said, at third, it looks like that is going to be the route. And you would think just at this point, you'd want to get that guy in there and just get that cohesion and that consistent voice going throughout the system. And especially like Graves had mentioned, what was the name of that position? It was a coordinator, or what was it exactly? Coaching coordinator.
Yeah.
So, let's just get it done. So we can sink our teeth in it from a selfish standpoint.
Yeah, and even that is probably more of an effort to take something off of Derek Shelton's plate. Instead of having him communicate down the chain things he'd like to see in the coaching world, they're going to have somebody else who's kind of the funnel for that. That's all. So, I mean, that's probably not as big a deal as some people will make out of it. But there's just a lot of these positions that other teams have had for a long time. The Pirates just seem to be a little behind on that stuff. And I'm not so sure that they needed to wait a full couple seasons before they started addressing some of those things, if that's what they were concerned about.
They do seem to take their time with things organizationally now, maybe to an excess, but it certainly seems to fit the pattern of what we've seen.
And I think it goes with, it's taken us this far to kind of evaluate the players. Well, they've been doing the same with the coaching staff, and now they're seeing, okay, this isn't working out. Let's get some other voices in here. Let's maybe add to it. And, because the other ones that were here weren't getting the job done. So they're taking a different path and stretching out a little bit more to see what they can bring in and help be better at baseball.
Curious times, though. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about, really the Pirates fans' place in society here in the city, because lately it's just been kind of weird. And we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. Another thing I'd like to discuss today is really the way Pirates fans are looked at. I'm watching the Steelers and Pens struggle, and because I love all our teams, I guess we'll put it this way. Most of my sporting hopes right now are on Pitt football, which scares the soul out of me. I mean, point is, Pirates fans have been negative with good reason. The other teams are showing us winning in recent history hasn't taken that off the table for them. So all this to say, winning it all wouldn't stop this fan base from hating what they hate, or more precisely who they hate within the Pirates organization. So, Jim, I'm going to let you start on this one because, you are all about the city. You definitely follow all the teams. You tweet about all the teams. I mean, it seems like certain fan bases can't handle a little adversity after a really, really nice period of time.
Yeah, first off the top for me, like the putting down of some of the teams as opposed to who you like to follow and whatnot. That just doesn't compute to me because, if you follow me on Twitter, it's Steelers, it's Pirates, it's Penguins, and it is Pitt. And it just doesn't compute to me that you would want to, put one down at the expense of the team that you happen to like. I mean,
if you don't like them, don't talk about them.
Yeah, and if you don't, and if you don't like them, I guess that's okay. It's a free country, but I mean, this city is a great sports town, in my opinion, and the teams support one another. If you've noticed, I mean, the Steelers, the Pirates, the Penguins, they always have each other's backs on social media. The players like to support each other. I mean, how many times have we watched a Penguins game and, you know, if it's not Ben Roethlisberger, it's the offensive line with Penguins jerseys on. And, you know, so it bleeds into all the teams, and they all, you know, support one another. So I just don't understand why in this city some people almost, I don't know, revel in it. That doesn't make sense to me. Now you've got me. Either. Now you've got me off track, Gary, because now I don't even remember what the original question was, because I wanted to get that out there that, come on, it's Pittsburgh. Let's support Pittsburgh teams. So what was the original question?
We should support Pittsburgh teams, but I guess what I'm asking specifically is I've always kind of been under the illusion that at some point the Pirates would win, and then people would be like, I get what they were doing now. It's okay, you know, and there'd be this warm hug where everybody comes back in and everything. But the Penguins just won 2 cups back to back, right? Just a few years ago. And people are losing their minds that they aren't good right now. To me, it didn't buy them anything. They have probably the most loved owner in professional sports. Granted, potentially on the verge of selling the team. But it hasn't won them any favors when it comes to that sort of thing. The Pirates are definitely not in a position where they're going to be able to win one and have PNC filled with warm and hugged feelings for 10 years afterwards.
Well, and as somebody who doesn't live in Pittsburgh, and so, you know, doesn't necessarily walk down the street and, you know, and feel the stares and everything else, and the hearing the comments about, you know, being a Pirates fan, and I typically don't listen to the talking heads on the radio either. So, but I believe that, I mean, all of them are kind of have the same tone, the same, you know, the Pirates stink. And when you constantly hear that, it's easy to join that bandwagon and say, yeah, the Pirates stink, or, oh yeah, we're so mad at the Penguins for not, you know, for sucking for the, you know, the last year or whatever. And it's just kind of like the thing to do anymore is just to lash out and to be angry instead of, you know, Pittsburgh is a great sports town, and there's no reason that fans can't support, you know, all the teams, or like you said, if you don't like hockey, then just don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to Pitt, especially, right? You know, you start talking about something that they're even close to doing, or something that is still in the realm of possibilities, and you'll get slapped down for you don't understand what's going on if you really think they have a shot, right?
Right.
It's things like that. The Pirates, I think, almost to Graves' point, it's not so much even just that they stink. It's that they're being preached as irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And you're almost getting to the point where when you bring them up, you're an imbecile, because why are you even bothering to pay attention to them? You know,
they've become a punchline of sorts. You know, some of that earned, quite honestly. So, heck, I remember I was just at a Penguins game recently, and saxophone guy roasted me for having my Pirates hat on. So, you know, I can't even get past sax guy without him doing something.
No, to be fair, nobody gets past sax guy, but I get what you're saying.
This is true, and I left myself open for it, but, you know, I just ignored him like I always do. But, you know, look, the Pirates, I think what this really comes down to is, and, you know, maybe it's just, and Gary, you mentioned this on Twitter the other day, in a response to something I tweeted, which was, you know, fans are just spoiled. We are here in Pittsburgh quite a bit when it comes to things like,
especially our age group.
Yeah. And if you think about it, let's go even younger than that. some of these fans here with the the Penguins and the Steelers, they don't know what a losing season is in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Literally, we're coming up on people that are actually of 18 years of age that would not know that the Steelers, they've never experienced a losing season with the Steelers.
They don't remember Gary Anderson kicking that field goal in the playoffs against the Broncos and just being in utter disbelief that we finally won a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the Penguins now. Now that's where people even our age are spoiled because look, you've got the 5 Stanley Cups and you've had the 2 best hockey players in the world. So the Pirates are already behind the 8 ball right there, right. Obviously. But yeah, so I just think it comes down to fans are spoiled. Pittsburgh fans are spoiled. The success has been there, and the Pirates have kind of become like the nerdy roommate that everyone kind of gangs up on that they don't like in the real world house, right? So I don't know.
Right. You're right. They bring it on themselves a little bit. They don't spend enough money, and I think we're learning recently from a communication standpoint they're awful at it. They don't necessarily go out of their way to do things the right way, I don't feel. But they also don't get any credit for being the only major sports team in town that is not playing in a league that provides an even playing field. And I do wonder how they became so hated. How did people not see that happening? It's been years and years like this where MLB is disproportionate. It's not like this just happened in 2016 or something. It's not like it just happened last decade. This has been years and years and years. And we've watched these other leagues remake themselves. One instance actually saving the team from leaving town. And yet we still want to target the Pirates and just pretend it's all this one guy. I mean, you could have anybody come in here and own this team, and it might get marginally better, but it is not going to be that much different. I always say, hate him for the right reasons. One of the right reasons is not thinking that he's underpaying by $150 million. I mean, it's not that.
Right.
He doesn't have that money.
Go ahead, Graves. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I kind of got mesmerized there and lost my train of thought. But I think most fans don't look at the salary cap. They're kind of oblivious to that. They want to see the team take the field and go out there and win. They're not thinking about the salary cap and the business side of things. I mean, and I mean, it's a huge issue, but, and hopefully it's going to be something that, will maybe get talked about and get taken care of here in the new CBA.
Or maybe they see the salary cap as a bad thing. And the reason I say that is if you exclusively follow the Steelers, right? Well, you're pissed that the salary cap just cost you Bud Dupree. You're pissed that the salary cap is preventing you from having a better offensive line, right?
Right.
They're not seeing the fact that literally Ben Roethlisberger would have been gone 15 years ago and, various other things that would take place if there wasn't one. But once you've had a cap for decades, it kind of just becomes second nature that there's a cap and it's this money that you have to fit in. And so
sure,
maybe... Yeah, so maybe not having it in baseball isn't even a thought because, hey, things are tough all over, like Cheech and Chong used to say. So maybe it doesn't really matter in that regard, Jim.
It's a valid point. I think some fans just don't care about that stuff, and certainly if you're in the bigger markets, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see that. Your team's free to spend as it wishes, and thereby it increases your chance of winning. And and then there are just fans who look at it as it's not an excuse. And some teams are able to seemingly navigate those choppy waters despite those disadvantages. And
or we could afford all these players in the 70s.
Yeah.
Why can't we now? Yeah.
Right. Or even flash forwarding to now, well, the Rays do it and the Royals did it. And so you get that aspect of it too.
I will say this, like from an outside interference perspective, my God, if the Rays signed Wander Franco for $150 to $200 million for 10 years, the Pirates have no place to hide. None. Yeah. And yes, they don't have a player like Wander Franco. But if you tell me you can't afford Brian Reynolds,
I suspect we will be talking about this in the future, all of us at some point. So I'm so curious to see how that whole thing unfolds, because yes, there's a lot of angles to that. Baseball, big picture, Pirates. It's a fascinating topic, and the
Rays are smarter than most organizations. I think that's fair to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes. If the Rays are smarter than most organizations and they're offering something like that to Wander Franco right now, you figure he's probably good for 70, 80 million before his arbitration ends right now. So they basically are offering him a minimum of an $80 million pay bump for 2 to 3 extra years of service time. If that's the case, then the Rays know something about what's coming in this CBA that the rest of the league doesn't.
It's curious timing for sure.
It is.
Because it doesn't even make sense from a Rays standpoint for them to do what they always do, which is trade him when he gets really expensive, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I'm just saying, like, they either know something that everybody else doesn't or whatever. And to bring it back around, to make this a Pirates topic, if that happens, it's going to cause some changes. It really will. I think you're going to see the Pirates have to realize, like, they got to go out and do some things like that. They're okay being part of a group of teams that don't spend, but you start isolating them into a team that doesn't spend, and I think things get much more uncomfortable for somebody.
Sure, the further out you get on that limb, that branch by yourself, the worse it looks, the worse it is. So from both, you can't run from it and you can't hide from it. So like there are some big ramifications from something like that. And of course we've got the new CBA deal or whatever's going to happen there. So, but let me just bring it back to something really basic. And I'm trying not to. I don't want to be insulting here about what I'm going to say, but it might come off that way. So, look, a lot of it comes down to with the Pirates is just from the optics standpoint. Let's be real honest. When fans look at who owns the Pirates and you see that face, I mean, it is not a warm and fuzzy feeling. I mean, Bob Nutting has a punchable face. Let's be real honest here. So he just doesn't, some guys pull it off and, some guys look like, oh my goodness, I can't think of Mark Zuckerberg. And just he doesn't give you good vibes. It's kind of like politicians and how they have to be perfectly coiffed and look believable. I mean, when you look at Bob Nutting, do you get any of that before he opens his mouth once every 3 years? At
this point, the horse is out of the barn. All right. This dude could show up at Market Square with a bag full of cash, handing it out to strangers, and the narrative ain't changing.
Not now. Right. It's not.
No, that's what I mean. Like, it's too late. It's not going to change at this point. And I'm not sure how much of what has, become his story was necessarily his doing as much as trusting fools.
Yeah.
But
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you want to be mad at anybody, the person I'm mad at is Neil Huntington. He, Nutting maybe was wrong to put all of his faith in him and Clint Hurdle and everything else. But unfortunately, that happened. But for now, as we can see, he did get that wake up call. He made the changes that desperately needed to be made, and hopefully we're getting this thing turned around, and we can bring a championship to the North Shore, because it is greatly needed, and there's no secret. Nutting could have been spending money all along, but he's never been forced to, and maybe if the Rays go out and do this big deal with the new CBA, whatever the case is, if he feels a little bit of pressure to spend some money, maybe that's what it's going to take for him to say, okay, I need to stop saving my money and counting my $100 bills. It's time to spend and bring a championship.
Yeah. I think what ends up happening too is you see this a lot with kind of in a lot of different walks of life. And I'm talking government, the private sector, sports teams, whatever, especially with poorly run organizations or businesses that seem to be flailing around a little bit. Sometimes you have to be embarrassed into doing things. Yeah. And it's got to be a public display, and then you finally, whether you wanted to or not, are forced into doing it, or you've been bludgeoned over the head with it enough that you finally realize it. Not kind of unlike what happened when Nutting wasn't going to make many changes after the fiasco of a couple years ago, and he was going to sit tight. So, I think that's emblematic of organizations that haven't quite figured some things out, and maybe how things tend to trickle down from the top. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a great point too about bringing it back to when he actually made all the changes, because you're right. He doesn't do that without the public pressure that took place. I mean, everybody lost their minds screaming for accountability, and to his credit, he listened at some point, albeit a little late, and I really want to like the hires and everything. I guess it's hard not to get frustrated no matter how pragmatic you really are looking at this stuff, because you do see certain aspects of the league kind of moving forward in a different direction already. And, you start seeing like the Tigers are ramping back up to start spending money again. And we saw the White Sox ramp up and start spending money again just a couple years ago. And I guess from a Pirates fan perspective, what frustrates me the most is I know just from the history that I've experienced, I can't expect that to come. That's my problem. The Tigers have a history of rebuilding, coming out of it, and spending as much as they possibly can. The Pirates have a history of rebuilding, spending a little, and doing the best they can. That's the difference. And guess what? It's amounted to the same amount of championships, really. It's just
and therein lies the problem in baseball, right? That
absolutely
some owners have figured that out. Where why am I going to go down and spend $5,000 on lottery tickets and come home with $5,000 less in my pocket? So that's hopefully part of what they're going to try to address.
It better be.
Yeah, it has to be, really. I mean, if it's not, then it's no different than it was, and better hope all those prospects turn out. Let's take another break here. Then we come back. Let's talk a little bit more about how the Pirates are trying to confuse us, it feels. right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. And, you know, during the break, I was just telling Jim we're going to have to talk about something positive at some point, because it's been 3 weeks of Debbie Downers on the show lately. So I figured let's go ahead and wrap it up and make it one more big old show of bad.
Gary, do people want the truth, or do they just want some smoke blowing up their rear ends? Because, you know, I happen to like the truth, so this is where we give it to them.
That's right. And the most positive thing we could really talk about is who gets cut today, really. So we'll handle that next week. For now, though, I thought we'd touch on a little bit of the confusing things that the Pirates seem to be doing on the public relations standpoint. This goes all the way back for me to the Polanco situation. Like, you know, it was such a messy exit for a player that had spent the better part of a decade in your organization. And I guess I didn't really understand how that was handled or why things leaked and things like that. And then most of the fan base is kind of locked up in consternation about this 40 man and who's going to get protected and who's going to get cut to make room for the prospects. And, you know, we're all got our boards and we're looking around at who's available and who we think we're going to get rid of and where this slot's going to come from. Lo and behold, the Pirates went ahead and cut 2 or 3 players back in October 5th, mind you. This isn't like Halloween. This is a month and a half ago. We just find out the other day they're gone. Oh, yeah. Phillip Evans, that guy you keep talking about, wanting to cut to replace he's been gone for like a month and a half. Sorry, suckers. Tell us. What is so damn hard about telling us? I understand there's some rules and stuff for why they couldn't formally be cut, but tell me you did it and let the legalese take care of itself in the background. Maybe this is just, you know, a blogger and podcaster who's ticked off that I have to sit there and refresh a transactions page for 6 hours straight to get some answers out of the Pirates. But as a fan, I want to know this stuff. Graves, is it frustrating you the way it is me, or am I just unhinged?
No, I'm right there with you, and I think
he's unhinged, Graves. Don't worry about that.
Well, now I found out Alex Stumpf cut his hair, and I'm the only hippie. Yeah.
You're unhinged.
I'm on edge today.
No, and I think it even goes back to before Polanco, but you know, I think to even compound the situation is the transaction page updated, and then 7 hours later, the Pirates are tweeting about it that you know, it's official and we cut these guys. It's like the transaction page should never be updated until it's official, you know, and so that just kind of compounded the whole thing. It's bad enough that it happened in October, and we're not finding out about it until now. But you know, it's strange, and I don't get it. You know, we were promised some more transparency, and we're certainly not getting it. You know, I think the players on the field are getting it. You know, they're more involved in their own development and things like that. But and part of me too, you know, the Pirate fans are so hungry for information. You know, we just sit and we wait for the next big news to break, and then we chew it up and spit it out, and for the next 48 hours, and then we sit and we wait for the next thing. And it's pretty simple to just let us know, okay, these guys were cut, and right. and be done with it. And you know, I think it's crazy. I mean, the Pirates want the fans to be buying into this rebuild, but they're not giving us much information, and it is frustrating. Right.
I mean, and, you know, Jim, this is part of why Travis Williams was brought in here, right? Because he came from a good organization that knew how to talk to the public, had a lot of experience in fan engagement and everything like that. I haven't seen it. I'm seeing really slow reactions. I'm seeing even worse releases. It's not like this is the first time that this has happened. I mean, Ildemaro Vargas was another player during the season that was released and we didn't know it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Travis Williams, and perfect example of, they brought him in and they really kind of sold him about his extensive history with the Penguins and what he can bring to the organization. And, truthfully, the media was right there with it too, just saying, hey, this is a good guy, and this is a guy you want to have. And he's got a lot of knowledge and experience and is going to be able to, do some really good things for this organization off the field. And it just hasn't happened. I mean, I have seen so little from him that I can't remember the last time, unless I just totally missed it and it was recently, that he had anything to say about anything or substantive. So I haven't
seen much either.
No. So, and this brings me back to a larger point. And I think, we've talked about the transactional stuff, and we've talked about the Polanco stuff.
Yep.
And we haven't even gotten into the Clint Hurdle fiasco and how all that unfolded, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, mostly because that was the last regime. So I'm kind of like giving them a glass wall there. But
okay, but hear me out, because it's certainly under the same ownership. Okay, so here's where I'm going with this, is that I think we talk so much about, well, players need to learn how to win. And that's something that you can only learn through experience, and then that standard has to be upheld, and it kind of trickles down and around and through everybody else, and then that's how you build a winning team from the player standpoint. But you know what? Not only do players have to learn how to be winners and champions, so does management.
Yeah.
So does an organization. So does ownership. And I think until you get that recipe figured out and you've done it, it's not as easy as it looks. And I think you see it with teams that have had issues over the years where that's not a simple recipe. And everyone has to learn how to do that at a championship level. And we're talking about everything from development to communication to how the ownership behaves to how the players are developing and performing. Look, this is something that is not just going to be contained to just simply going out between those white lines and doing X, Y, and Z. So I think what you're seeing is an organization that needs to learn how to win on a lot of different levels. And it's still pretty prevalent throughout.
That's a really good point.
That's a great point.
I think what frustrates me really about Charrington in particular, he brought it up himself in a recent MLB Network interview where he was talking about his experience. And then I saw in the Boston Globe that they did a nice write-up about him. And they started talking about how this was a perfect fit for him because he had just gotten done rebuilding a team in Boston and then went to Toronto and saw a down to the studs rebuild. And that's exactly what he wants to pull off. And so my point is those tricks of the trade, those learning to win things that you're talking about, he should have learned those on his path. That was part of the appeal of bringing somebody with experience in here is he wasn't going to have to learn that stuff.
Sure.
Part of what he should have learned, I would think, would be that fans going through a rebuild really want to know about all the crap. We want to know how the sausage is made or we wouldn't be paying attention. The fans that are still hanging with you during a rebuild want to know this stuff. The fans that are going to join you once you've gotten the job done and the team is good don't give a crap about this stuff. So if you care about the fans that are here right now, tell us what's going on. Be open with us and honest and tell us about your hitting coach search. Don't just like tell us you got a couple guys you're thinking about. Tell us what you're looking for. You obviously have some qualifications. Don't like what Graves read earlier was about Indeed, basically. It was like me trying to hire a Dick's manager. I want somebody to tell me, like, this is why we want a guy that can do this specific thing, because we want to get better in this aspect. This is the types of things you can expect to see from our hitting program. This is the type of instruction we're going to be giving people. That's the type of stuff I want to hear about. And maybe I'm a nerd, but I'm a nerd that's here. I'm a nerd that's paying money.
And we care.
I'm a nerd that's going to the games.
Yep.
Care or don't.
I agree. And I think it's just, it's another example of I mean, obviously Sherrington has an idea of what he wants to do, and he's actually accomplished it. So he's not a moron.
Yeah.
Now, that's not what I'm suggesting. And I know that that's not what you think I'm suggesting. It's just that, but I think what it does show is, and we've seen this in other teams, other sports, sometimes it's not just as easy as going out and trying to plug the right guy in. If you've got a lot of things in your organization that still need to be, cleaned up, brought up to speed, tightened up, however you want to, buttoned up. I mean, let's just up it all over the place, however you want to up it. But, that it's just not that simple sometimes in organizations that have not quite learned how to run. They're still walking and they're still crawling. And yes, you've plugged in the Ben Sherrington and you went and got Travis Williams, but there's still dysfunction or just a disconnect to get everything working like it needs to do. Now, winning will take care of a lot of that. But you know what? Sometimes before you win, this stuff has to happen too. So, it's just, you do see guys come into situations. Oh, we got the right coach. Sometimes it ain't that easy. So,
yeah, I mean, the scariest thing for me is that Ben Sherrington came from two organizations, one that successfully went all the way with him, one that he was a part of that is looking pretty good right now, as far as like having an opportunity here next year in the Blue Jays. So if he came in here with a mindset that he wanted to basically replicate the infrastructure that he was coming from, and the reason that it's taken so long is because he was kind of told, yeah, we don't want to pay for that right this second, then I've got some issues. So my point is, a lot of this stuff, yeah, I know it's hard to hire the right coach. But if you already know what you want that coach to preach, I don't need the name of the coach for you to show me where the pulpit is. I get where he's going to be preaching.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. Just tell us a little bit more. That's all.
I think it goes hand in hand with accountability. We want accountability of the players. Let's see some accountability in the front office too. Yeah, Ben Sherrington was brought in to do his job, but he can't necessarily always be in charge of who's ever updating the transaction page. Let's get some accountability there, and just it's been sloppy. So let's clean up the slop a little bit and have a little bit of credibility, and maybe we won't always be the laughing stock of this town in baseball because we can't get our crap together.
I mean, let me tell you a little story about myself here that I think will kind of shed a little bit of what you just said. When I first started writing about the Pirates, I mean, I've made no secret about it. I've had some pretty good backers along the way that have really helped me along. And my first story for SI came out, and I tweeted out, like, hey, check this out. I just wrote this, everybody. And I had a misspelling in it. And I'll never forget this. I get a DM from Dejan, and it just says, hey, Gary, you got a misspelling in there. And I go, yeah, I saw. I screwed it up. It's already moving along. He goes, no, change it, fix it, take it down.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And he goes, you don't understand. That's all they'll see. Like those dotting of I's and crossing of T's, they matter.
Yep.
And that's the kind of stuff that something as simple as not telling us about somebody you cut a month and a half ago mean to people that are really paying attention. And if you want people to take you seriously, then act seriously. Don't mess things up like that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Listen, there's a reason certain teams, certain organizations don't embarrass themselves because they have their stuff together. And that is not acceptable. And that is, you can say the standard is the standard or whatever you want to say, or we want to point to the Patriots or, whoever.
That's only popular if the Steelers are 8 games over 500.
This is true. This is true. Depends on what week we're in. But, and after a tie and me being at the game, I don't know what week I'm in. So,
that's popcorn, Jim. That's just that? Popcorn.
Oh, that was popcorn? Okay. Yeah. So, so look, the devil is in the details. And, you can say that's cliche, or you can say, well, they're the Patriots, and how dare you? What do you think, the Pirates can become the Patriots? No, I don't. Do I think they should emulate organizations like that? Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just there are little things that well-run organizations that win, you don't see it. And that's all I'll say.
That said, to bring it back around to positive, because, in all sincerity, I'm bashing them on a nitpicky point here. I'm not saying this is a huge deal. It's just an overriding feeling for me of just missing the boat on a few little things here. But to spin it back around positive, if we want things like communication to get a little bit better, we do need to start seeing them hire some people like that coaching assistant that they're talking about, their coaching supervisor. That's maybe little things like that are the things we need to start seeing. So I'll take that as a positive that they're starting to see some of their deficiencies and fill them. I just pray that it's an oversight that led them to not do it before now. That's all.
Sure.
Because Graves, one thing we talk about a lot is like we feel like they really need an assistant pitching coach.
Yep.
They're one of the only teams in the league that doesn't have one. And it's a lot to ask of one guy to be the voice that's supposed to accurately communicate your message to that many players. And let's face it, different personalities don't always mesh. You sometimes need an alternative there to get through to somebody that's maybe a little thicker skinned or a little thicker headed. So that's an area where I feel like they can make a quick improvement as well. And I'm not seeing that on the horizon. I'm not hearing any chatter about that.
Yeah, I haven't either. And one thing that has concerned me a little bit is Charrington mentioned, I believe it was Charrington, said about maybe Don Kelly would take over as the infield coach while still being the bench coach. And it's kind of the same thing with Oscar Marine. I think he's already stretched pretty thin. Why are we Kelly to be stretched thin and go out there and coach the infield? So it's strange to me that they're taking this approach and they don't want to add when there's obviously a need to like you said, add that extra voice in there to get through to some of these players and maybe this coordinator that they're looking to hire, maybe that'll be part of his responsibilities too. But something's got to change here.
Yeah, and that's weird too, because if Don Kelly's really a managerial, somebody that's up for managerial jobs in the future here, you'd think he'd want to be stepping away from the field, not stepping back onto it. But Jim,
right.
What's up?
No, I was just going to say is, look, all organizations aren't perfect, and there are missteps. I mean, we've seen the Steelers go through it a little bit with some things. The Penguins have had something going on recently that hasn't been very flattering. Just things that happen, things that you have to navigate through, and mistakes can be made. But you know what? when you're operating at a very high level and you limit those, and people don't have a lot of things to point to in the past, you tend to build up a lot of goodwill and trust that way.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it with the Pirates is, and maybe we're guilty of it too, is we sit here and we bringing up the transaction things. It's a little bit of PTSD and just like, see here, I mean, here's just another example. And
yeah.
So, but the Pirates,
maybe it's a little bit of a case of we expected them to fix everything and nobody could.
Right. And so there's some of that, but if the Pirates were to clean it up for a consistent period of time, then I think some of that goes away and you are given some leeway. Hey, nobody's perfect. You can't control everything. But, the Pirates just certainly aren't at that point, whereas some of the other teams, funny, we're back to that with how other teams are viewed and the fans. But, they've been afforded some goodwill in that regard, and they've earned that in a way.
I mean, I'd love to see the Pirates emulate the Steelers, especially Cole Tucker. I would love for him to complain he's not getting enough playing time and cry until they trade him to Kansas City. I mean, I would love that. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. Hey, good show, everybody. I promise I'm going to try to be a little more positive next week with the holidays and everything. So we'll find some topics that interest us and are still truthful. And I know we're going to be talking about the 40-man next week. So for Jim and Graves, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. Check out every show on the podcasting network. They're all good. Subscribe, follow us on Twitter. Graves, what's your handle again?
I am at KG_55 VFTG. I'm Voice from the Graves. Give me a follow on Twitter. I love to talk Pirates baseball in general, and just have a good time.
There you go. And Jim, everybody knows how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so Twitter all the time. For the city _412 or at Jim Stamm 22. You know me, guys. I'm all Pittsburgh all the time. Steelers, Pirates, Pitt, and Pens.
Yeah, and I think the overriding theme of this episode really is exactly what Jim's mission statement on Twitter is. We are all for the city all the time. And we want every team to do well. And whichever one you like best or don't like, it doesn't matter. Just allow other people the room to root for who they like and
well
enjoy
said.
it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and toss it to our friend Ben, huh?
Yes, your butt.